things. John's Garage brought in 2 pallets of things, and the local residents were just fantastic. The Friendly Pets brought in a load of stuff, and just residents just kept coming into the fair. And then yesterday we went to Market Basket from 8 to 7 and got 14 pallets of things, which was all brought in each individual item. Whereas Saturday we got a lot of pallet deliveries. These were all, we had I think 4 pallets of water alone. So it was a huge success. It's great. S&J has taken the trailer, they're emptying it, and then they're going to package everything up and see where we're at. That's going to take a couple of days. And then they've committed, if needed, to send a load to Florida. I don't know what the need is, if or there is a need. I don't know for sure. I don't think anybody knows really for sure what the actual damage is, but that's where we're at for that. So it's at S&J to be repackaged, taken out, organized better, because we just, towards the end, like we ran out of room. We literally just threw paper towels and things in the back for room. Because we can't go up high, we had to just, we filled the whole entire trailer floor was full by the end of the night yesterday. So it was a great success. People were very pleased that we did that.
It's a 53-foot trailer too, isn't it?
Yes, it's a big trailer with 53 foot. It holds a lot of stuff, and it's all non-perishable food items and diapers and baby formula and underwear and socks, and it was amazing what people did.
I think the Board of Selectmen want to thank you if you're spearheading this, or the committee that you're working with. We appreciate all the effort, and we know it does take a lot of time. I did hear it was OKQ talks about Lee.
Yes, and they would like to partner up with the Shark this week and advertise it some more, but I need to get, I need to find out from S&J where we're at, and they needed some time. And then they too will broadcast it. They're partners or affiliates somehow with the Shark radio station, and they too would like to do it. Some advertising for that. We need to kind of find out where we're at before we do that.
Well, thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the board?
No, it was a good idea, and thank you very much for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. I will pass it on to my team.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other public comments? Move on to the next item, item number 3, Randy Stevens, Highway Supervisor, SB 38 Local Highway Aid.
Hi there. I understand the board was interested in possible choices for how to spend money.
Absolutely.
So probably all saw the thing I put together. There's plenty of things that need to be done, plenty of ways to do it. Number 1 was put it towards the Tuttle Road Culvert project. There have been at least 2 letters of intent sent to FEMA, or Homeland Security in Concord. I guess they forward to FEMA for possible funding. Supposed to meet with the engineer sometime soon. Down at the site to see how things are going with the permitting and all that, and see how the grants are coming. I guess that wouldn't be my first choice, even though it's number 1. The Tuttle Road Embankment project, and that could be or included in the FEMA project as well. But last time we included both projects in the FEMA thing, and we almost made it, but we didn't. So number 3 is split use choices. The Wednesday Hill culvert, we keep putting it off, partly because it's a lot bigger job than we thought it was going to be. It's going to need a real good size excavator and trench boxes and everything else for safety, because it's got to dig it 16 feet deep. Unfortunately,
That's deep.
Yeah, it's deep, and you have to take, when you're digging that deep, you have to take a lot of safety precautions. So I knew, that's one of the reasons we put it off. We knew we didn't have enough money in our hired equipment account. So that was A. B would be $5,000 more for tree work. There's an awful lot of big trees around as a threat. Crack filling, we've been doing that for a couple of years, just because all the money's been tied up with paving. Pave the transfer station, recycling center road, that's been 13 years. We probably seal coat inside the building. Shipment pave Thompson Mill Road, and the price is there, $55,000. And that totals up to $95,630, just a tad over. I figured that 70 a ton, we paid $62.80 this year. I figured it's kind of pretty good chance it's going to go up the way things are. Already put it number 4 is just putting it strictly paving. Which the total is at 70 a ton is a little bit over what funds we have, but. So there's just a few ideas. I guess paving, I wouldn't try to get it done this year, there's just so many people. Anybody that had a contract that hadn't done the paving yet, it's just adding on. I talked to the salesman from GMI, he says they're just going crazy trying to accommodate it all.
Practically impossible to get anybody to
You
do
know, you know when they work the crews 12, 14, 16 hours a day, they get tired and they just don't have the quality work. So if it costs a little more in the spring, you might be better off. That'd be my recommendation, but there's some choices. The board can kind of give me a little guidance which way you like to head it and keep it in mind. I don't think we have to do anything immediately, but.
Is there any one of these that just keep getting putting off because you just don't have the time with the money, or?
Mostly the Wednesday Hill culvert project would be the most thing. Tree work, we never have quite enough in there. I'd say that, I guess number 3 is probably the way it'd lean, just because it allows you to do a variety of things.
It's the way I'm leaning right now.
It's not a city, get it.
Know whether we can use the money to pave the transfer station parking lot. I would want to reach out to DOT and DRA
They
and confirm
Definitely
that.
can do the road in because it's a public way,
We can do the road.
the circle, around,
Yeah.
I would think.
Mm.
Don't know, but anyway, certainly check.
Yeah, but number 3 seems to sit with me
You get
because
get more bang for the buck there, don't you?
things that you normally don't get done and keep getting put off, like the Wednesday thing is pretty demanding, and I understand about tree work because it hits power lines and all the problems that exist. And I kind of lean towards that one. What do you think, Scott?
Same thing. So can we tell, for the paving, can we put it off till next spring, like you suggest? And in terms of, can you find out about the transfer station? If not, maybe you can find something else to do at that time.
Yeah, we could do Gar Road instead of that, which would come out about the same.
Okay.
As number 4, I had Gar Road in there, but.
Yeah, it's close to the same, it's a little bit more. So that's the way I would lead. Okay, we'll kind of keep that in mind and sort of keep it in mind with the budgeting. Couple other quick words. I think a couple board members have asked me about the new truck. September 6th, it was supposed to go on the
robot, so when we're using their kind of a high-quality truck, it's because they take time building it. So it's supposed to be done the 22nd. I told the salesman today, he said the last time he looked it was on schedule. I don't think the hurricane got them that bad, so we probably wouldn't see it till October 1st here, time it got delivered and get checked out in Manchester, and then it would go to Maine, get all the equipment put on, 3 or 4 weeks there, so. Somewhere between November 1st and Thanksgiving, my guess.
It's a good time to get a truck, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be nice to do a little something with it, we have to start plowing snow, get used to it. And the other thing is, budgets are due the 15th, Friday, I guess it is. Seeing this as a possibility of me making this budget for someone else. And I know you're going to be talking about the budgets later, so you may want to just give me some guidance on that. But right now, with this addition of the state monies, I think we're in pretty good shape. I was going to try to bump up the part-time labor, and maybe a couple of the small things, but I wasn't going to make a whole lot of change. That's all I got. She got something for me.
Questions? We're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item listed is Select Board Year 19 budget discussions. I think we left it last time about what we want to do about the budget, perhaps some guidance for all the different departments. And I think, I feel it should be kind of flat because I understand that, Julie, could you give us more information on that? What would you think
Well, as we talked about, I think it was the last meeting, the calculation I did a few weeks ago, we're looking at, it was $1.73 increase in the tax rate on the town side, and then the school had estimated 66 cents. The school side, that's without the board putting any money from the unassigned fund balance towards the tax rate, which we have done heavily in the past 2 years. Last year was over 500,000. Year before that, it was say 425,000.
And the fund balance as of today?
As of the last audit, I think we were at just over 1.8.
And what was our decision that we were trying to stick around?
We'll go over 1.5.
10% of the appropriations, which would put us at about 1.5.
There's not a lot of breathing space in there at this point. So I'm kind of leaning towards kind of a flat budget. It's kind of the same as last year. Comments from the rest of the board, please.
I think I said it last meeting, I think we should go with a zero increase. I think we ought to hold the line. If there's something extraordinary we need to deal with, we'll deal with it on a one-on-one basis, but I think that just going into it for planning purposes, it ought to be hold the line on the budget.
Mr. Buckley?
Same thing, if the department head wishes to request something additional, they should come with a detailed explanation of why and what it is that they want the extra money for. It's the only thing I have, but
It's
yeah,
gonna be a tough year,
always is.
you know.
It's always something.
So am I to advise the department heads that they're supposed to submit a flat budget? Or,
They can move, let me be sure, they can move within the categories, right? It's just the bottom
Right,
dollar
bottom
amount,
line.
that- so, yeah,
A flat
that would be
budget.
mine.
What? Yep. And as Mr. Buckley says, if there's something really special, they can always talk about it. We can listen.
well, just, those are somewhat conflicting messages, because I would have to hope that the department heads aren't going to present increases in the budget for something that they don't think is necessary.
Well, I'm talking about emergency issues.
I think if they put together the budget based on this year's budget,
Mhm.
and then if there's something that they feel needs to be addressed that's not reflected in this year's budget, then they can bring that up and say, okay, here's the problem I got. And we can say, well, that's right, you got the problem, and we'll just have to deal with it, or make a decision based on that.
For instance, in your budget, you're gonna have an issue because I don't think the health insurance is gonna be the same as it was last year. So
No, probably not.
So you're gonna have to go in and say, okay, this increase is because of the rates went up, such and such.
And I can't take them anyplace else.
Yeah. So, and that goes for other department heads too. If they've got things that they have to get and the price has gone up, of course, their budget's gonna have to go up. But they need to hold the line as much as possible. So for instance, if Randy comes to us, are you looking at his budget and salt was, increased by 20%, he needs salt for the roads, so he's gonna have to come in and say, okay, I need X amount more for this particular salt thing.
Right, but I mean, if what the board is looking for at the end of the day is a zero increase, then obviously cuts are gonna have to be made. Because I guess that's what I'm trying to just struggle with. I mean, if a department head wants or needs $20,000 in some line because it's unavoidable, are you asking them to cut $20,000 in the rest of the budget? Or they just come and make the strong case for the 20,000?
I think, my response to that would be, I'm asking for them to make the reduction, but you look at it and it's just like your health insurance or something else. If it's, if there's no choices there, but otherwise, we're looking at staying within this year's budget.
And I concur. I think we're saying what you're asking.
Okay. I will relay that message.
Any other discussion on this item? Scott, you look like you're aching to say something.
The only other thing is we have to schedule the ABC meetings.
Yes.
So we need to know when this group is available. So I've been polling the people that are responding, at least to the ABC requests, and there's certain days that they're free and certain days they're not. So if the two of you can let me know what days you are or aren't free,
Wednesdays are good.
Wednesdays are good.
We're talking about, so
And what days are not so good?
Wednesdays are pretty good in general. Wednesday
Right.
evenings, yes.
No Tuesdays, Thursdays?
Thursday's planning board issues, but it's not every single week. I don't know what the planning, Karen's not here at this point.
Well, when they do meet, it's a Thursday, right?
It's a Thursday, so there we go. It's usually a Thursday.
Okay. Tuesdays are out?
I have meetings, it's not entirely out, if it depends.
So those
I
are
don't have my
two.
full schedule yet for Tuesday.
All right,
I do have one for Wednesday, though.
all right. Mr. Brown?
I'm pretty flexible.
Okay.
Flexible guy.
All right,
There's a few days I'm gonna be out of town, but I'll give you the actual dates.
okay.
Anything else in budget? Town administrator? All right, let's move forward. The next issue is item number 5, Select Board, discuss Facilities Committee recommendation. As was suggested last time for the chairperson, I don't want to drop this. I think somehow all the work that's been done, I don't want to let it stay fallow at this point. So somehow we need to come up with either a committee or the board takes charge of this thing and moves forward and decides what they want to do. That's number one. And number two, I think we need to make a decision, do we concur with the recommendation? Or is there some other discussions that we want to look at? I still haven't left Stevens Field as an option at this time. I think chairperson had said that, no, chairperson is here, but the chairperson had said at that time is that it was kind of like an item, I think option 2, option 1 was the low ball, and option 3 was the high one, option 2 is in the middle somewhere. And that's building a new facility over there by what was the church property.
Disagreeing.
She's disagreeing.
Or not totally agreeing, how about that?
Not totally agreeing. Deborah Shanda,
Thank you.
18 Hill Farm Road. Yeah, it was actually, the first one was the church property, and for whatever reason that fell through, the Stevensville was a contingency plan to that one. And so they really, it's only if the church property falls through. And then number 3 was one that was basically adding on to the buildings as they exist. And that was definitely a second choice. Not to be 1A or 1B, but a true number 2. Okay.
So, comments and questions?
Well, I guess in terms of the order of your queries, one, do we accept that particular recommendation of that item number 2, which is the middle plan? Or do we want to do something else, or what? So I guess that's the first order of business. Do we agree with that particular choice? And if so, how do we go ahead with that particular choice?
Well, if I remember right, we can't make a decision until the church makes a decision, and that's in December. Is that right?
Unofficially, how about that? Unofficially,
Unbeknownst.
the rumor mill, how about that? The answer to our purchase and sales is not going to be no. It's going to be either yes, or it's going to be let's negotiate a price. Their person that they're doing the evaluation isn't going to be able to get their report done until the end of this month. So that's going to be given to them. They're going to review it. If they agree with it, then they can propose it to the membership to accept it. If they want to negotiate, that's going to take some time. So they need to give their membership at least 2 weeks' notice for a vote. So the soonest you have it is probably 2nd, 3rd week of October. If it's a yes, and they want to move forward. If they want to negotiate it, it's however long that particular process takes.
Well,
So, in their words, worst case is December is the latest that we probably know. That's their assessment, not mine.
but that's gonna determine the price. That's gonna determine.
Well, if they
the
feel our
price, and
offer
that's-
is adequate, they'll just
I mean-
accept it and suggest that to the membership. The membership votes for it. If they think that assessment is too, or that offer is too low, they're gonna come back and wanna negotiate.
But,
Comment?
well, I'm just curious when, and I realize that none of this has been given to us through official channels. But when you say, they might decide and they this, that's the board. I mean, do they really know what the body is gonna vote to do?
I don't know their internal politics, so
Right.
I do not know. What happens is the governing board, I don't remember the name, reviews these things, and then they recommend.
Right,
The board might recommend something, and the membership says no.
right.
It's just like us, we can recommend stuff to the voters, but the voters might say no. So,
I guess that's where I'm kind of sitting here. I mean, if they do say no, it goes back to the Stevens Field, so I don't want to leave that piece go. I'd like to see some more looking into that, because I'm trying to get the numbers straightened up, but Don is here at this point. I don't want to do just to fix the building routine. I'm not interested in that, or the very high-ended one, so it's that one in the middle, which means either it's new town hall, whether it's here or there. That's the one I'm looking at.
Well, Stevens Field is looking really good to me.
And that's kind of where I'm leaning at this point, but even, no matter what's with the church, I still want to get the land for case for expansion in the future.
well, the cost estimates we did, the cost of the land versus putting in, because you're going to put in an additional well and an additional septic system, those two things kind of even themselves out.
Yeah.
So in terms of just looking at it, if the church said no, moving that particular building over to Stevens Field, there's no cost change. If you choose to move it over to Stevens Field and you buy the church property, then that's going to cost you additional amount of money, whatever that happens to be. So we're talking about $50,000-$60,000 for a septic and
50 or 60, right in that
Something like that.
ballpark, right?
to do that over on Stevens Field. So just be aware that that's an additional cost that the committee did not put in there.
I do
Because
understand that. So I think Carrie and I are feeling the same way. Stevens Field is probably a pretty good option. I don't want to let it go at this time, since it's just a flip-flop, if you want to call it, from one place to the other, except for the cost of the, if we go with the church, it goes with the land itself.
Can you talk a little, if there was discussion with the facilities committee as to how much weight, if any, was placed on the difference between building a new town hall on that already extremely tight site and continuing the day-to-day operations versus building it on Stevens Field where day-to-day operations would not be impacted at all?
and the police chair was
Absolutely.
Deborah Shanda. Yes, we absolutely did, and I just want to say that the reason why the church property is number one was the overwhelming preference of the persons that attended the public forum 1 and 2. There was really no appetite for Stevens Field unless the church property would not become available. As far as having the operations of the town administration and tax collecting, et cetera, continue to take place, the church property is large enough that that new town hall would be completely built without disrupting any current functions, and then those persons would be moved into that facility, and then the remaining buildings would get moved, relocated, et cetera. So yes, that was actually discussed.
Okay. I'm just struggling with understanding how the construction of a 5,000 square foot building would take place there without disrupting what's going on. I mean, there's a house being built across my street, and it's disrupted everyone that lives on the
Well,
street.
you're going to get disrupted in terms of noise. We can't do anything about that.
Actually, I
In terms
hadn't
of-
even thought about that. I'm talking more of the traffic impeding and people coming in and out.
Well, that has frontage on the road,
Yeah,
so they can come in and out that
Yeah.
way.
yeah.
According to Al,
Yes.
it's based on his
Yeah.
last name, that is possible. He
You're
would
talking
not-
about Bud,
What?
Bud?
No.
Oh.
The guy from AG.
Oh, all right,
Good one.
all right, yes.
Wow.
Don't get it.
Wow.
That is possible. He would not recommend it if we didn't get the church property
Right.
trying to build up, because
Right.
it's just too tight. So you're gonna have some particular issues, but yeah, after that particular new facility is built, then at some point, those people are gonna move over, you're gonna be in a new building, annex is gonna go someplace,
TBD.
someplace else.
TBD, yeah.
And then they'll start working on the other things, most likely the town hall first. And in terms of, they're not gonna be lifting it, most likely, they're gonna be gutting it. So there's gonna be people in there, but you're gonna have another parking lot over there anyway. So I don't think I can say there'll be no disruptions, but, so yeah, it's much cleaner over here, but you're gonna have that additional $50,000 to $60,000 cost. And I think,
And it's not the preference of the people.
right, and that was the other big thing in terms of people, they'd rather continue the town center being in that particular location, so, but
I guess I'm at the stage, right now, my thinking is that the church property one is very interesting. If that doesn't go, we still have the Stevens Field, so they're both in the running head to head. So I guess what I'm telling you is that the more expensive one is out, the least expensive one is out. It's that middle ground. It's those two in my mind. And I think we should continue to move with respect to those two so we keep it alive, which means is some kind of, I hate to say it, marketing ploy, got to educate the town that these two options exist. And either one, we need a new town hall. And once we get the new town hall, the rest of it falls into place, no matter where it is. It's the same implementation plan. That doesn't change whatsoever.
I think that's exactly right. Put them both in front of the people. I mean, the fact that there was a group of people, the majority of which in this room said, well, we'd really like to get the church property, build a new, bigger, better town hall. Now that you've got prices on everything, now that you've got taxes coming up in front of everybody, what they select may or may not be based on the same criteria they were using before. So maybe you put them both in front of the people, let them select which one they want to go for.
May I ask just one question?
Please go for it.
I'm just trying to understand why the preference would be for Stevens Field in your mind.
Well, early in the process, when I looked at Stevens Field and we marked it off and did all that, it just looked to me, along with the pricing, which I think is going to be a big issue, obviously, that with the fact that it's next to the public safety complex, I think it's very convenient for the residents of Lee to do business. We expanded the town center, for lack of a better word, by a half a mile or something to say, yes, this is part of the town center. And when we marked it off, when Randy marked it off, it looked like it sat in there pretty nice. There was no big issues with it. And I thought it made a very nice complex between the two buildings. You can come to the public safety complex and do your fees or whatever. You can go next door. There's plenty of room for parking. There's no doubts about that. So that's just how I looked at it.
Right. Well, just in response to that, the cost between the two is roughly the same. I mean, when we're looking at, like I said, we put in contingency fees, we put in design fees. When we look at all of that, get them, and obviously there's some margin of error. These were pretty rough estimates, but both of those options are in the same ballpark. We're really talking
the
the
pricing
same.
for one option yet. I mean, you don't know what the church is coming forward with for that piece of land.
Absolutely, absolutely. But with the guidance of rumors, or whatever we want to call it, we put in 75,000, and with the hopes that would cover
We'll just
a lot, whether that would cover the site fees, the et cetera, whatever filing we had to do on behalf of
I'm
the
not trying to pocket from going to the people. If they want, we can put both of them up there and say, this is what this one costs, this is what this one costs, here's the advantage, and so on, and let them make a selection.
Okay, and the only other thing that I would say is that the public safety complex and the discussions of the facility committee was seen as less advantageous because of the traffic. And I do know that it is a separate parking lot, we went through all of that, but the thinking was that there was more synergies between the buildings with the library and the historical museum to be together than there was for the public safety complex, and that we really didn't want to impede any future building that might be needed there or any of the traffic patterns that existed.
Okay.
While you're there, now that you brought it up, how much of Stevens Field is used for recreation at this time, do you know?
They're using it this fall every day.
Every day. But if they had to go to Little River, it would be available?
They're using that in addition to Little River Park. But that's not ORYA, that's an outside private.
Okay, okay. Because I drive by, I do see people there.
Although I do think that the way we had laid out, or one of the layouts for the building, you could still use Stevens Field as a playing field.
So they can still use the back part of it.
Mhm.
And also, we got that section of Little River Park that was, I'm not sure how the seating is going, but that section where the piles were,
It's way in the back.
I'm surprised at how big of a field that is.
That is a big
Yeah.
field. It's the one that's behind us.
yeah,
Multi one.
you just have to watch the sheet droppings.
Well, it happens.
My colonial shoes were not very happy.
There's deer droppings out there all the time.
Well, this were significant.
Significant at this point.
And the thing in terms of the synergies, that I think, I don't know if you mentioned or not, but in terms of the parking, because like when we have things that happen here, there's usually not enough parking. So if we did go over there, that parking lot could be like overflow and vice versa if there's something that's happening at the town hall. Both particular locations lend them to, because the plan is for the town hall to be built, but there's no meeting room attached to the town hall. So either place, either location could accommodate that particular section being added on after the fact. So that's the only difference.
True.
So I guess we're at the point where we want to keep the option of Stevens Field's alive because of, depending on what the church wants to do.
And I think what you guys said earlier is in terms of present the stuff to the people and see what they want to do. And see if they half and half or they're leaning one way or the other. But I think it's important to give them the information. The lead voter is very smart and they will let you know very quickly, how they're thinking or how they're leaning. But I think the biggest part in terms of this next step is educating, and you use the word marketing, that implies something.
Yes, it
I think
does.
it's providing the information to the lead voter so they can make an informed decision and also ask questions in terms of, well, I see this, but what does that mean? What does that mean to me? And I think that's going to be our biggest challenge because you've got 900 people voting and you got a phone call, phone a friend, and we had our public hearings, public meetings, and we got 40, 50 people, 40, 50 versus 600. So we have a big task in front of us to educate them in terms of what the options are and what that means.
So I think it's an even bigger task than that. I mean, we kind of know where we're going, throughout the low, throughout the high. They might just say, I don't want anything whatsoever. Then we're back to where we started. So there is a double education. One, we got to justify need, which by showing Julie underneath the town hall is probably going to help. We'll exploit that as much as we possibly can, put that all over the place, and try to build up why there's a need out there. And there is, which I find more, and I want to thank the committee for, is the implementation plan. It's well thought out, what would be next, and as we get this done, we move here, we get this done, we move to the next thing.
Logistics. The thing in terms of the third plan, or the plan that just fixes ADA and stuff, there's the magnet school in Somersworth? I think it's the one that's been, no, it's not Meharmet. It's a magnet school, I think it's in Somersworth. They've been cited for
Rochester.
Rochester. They've been cited for ADA deficiencies. And the court has come in because somebody filed a thing against them. The court's come in and said, you need to have the plan by this fall and you need to fix those particular things. So I don't want us to be stuck in that situation where the court comes in and say, you shall fix these things or you're gonna close the buildings.
Yes.
I'd rather do it in our own time, not someone else's. So, and that's not, some of the people have said, well, that's a threat. It's not a threat. That's what the law is. And we need to take those particular things and fix them or upgrade them so that we're compliant with the federal law. You might not like the federal law, but that's what the law is. So in terms of the committee's recommendations, they're recommending a new group. What is it? What do we call that? Championing? No, we didn't use championing. What do we-
Jeffrey, you got a new group?
No.
I haven't organized it yet, who believe in the needs and,
Oh.
in the needs and historical value of maintaining the Lee Town Center.
But their focus is on keeping it at the center, or that recommendation.
I think that probably at this point, that's probably as far as I'm gonna go. I think the Board of Selectmen is gonna keep control of this thing, I think, for a while, until we decide, and I'm calling it a marketing plan. The marketing plan is, we need to sell that we have a need, number one, which I think we can establish, and number two, this is what we feel should be done. However, the voters make the final decision. But the more we put in front of them, the more material we put in front of them, the better off we are. I think, did we put anything in the prior yet in this material?
No, well, a lot of it, most of it's on the website.
What I'd like to be able to say, either because the Board of Selectmen has discussed it and gone through this particular, and tonight, that I'm going to call it whatever the option is, the one where we possibly would build in a church, and if things don't go through, we're looking at the Stevens Field. I want to start putting things in Equire regularly with pictures and things that people read about.
Okay, and we don't really have pictures. I mean, the only schematics we have are some of those original ones that Arcadano did, and I don't think that they have held in terms of the process.
Okay.
They're not up to date.
That would be the next thing the board would need to think about, is getting some renderings
That's what I would need.
and layouts.
A rendering for the church property town hall and a rendering for the Stevens Field. The church doesn't go through, at least one of those two renderings we can put in print and put out there. And then put in as much of the financial information we can that's realistic.
Well, we have to remember, the people are also interested in what's gonna happen with the library. You know, what's the plan for the library? What's the plan for the old town hall?
And I think the implementation
Okay, I
plan
mean,
has
all
to
of
go
that needs to be
somewhere.
put in front of them and say, here's what we're doing.
This is the latest one we have, but it's not complete. This particular section here for the library is smaller. This has changed a little bit, and there's no meeting room there. And this building is more of a square instead of a...
We have money enough to get a redraw on this?
Well, there's money in the town building capital reserve fund.
What you could do, and I don't know if Art is amenable to that, is to ask Art to make those particular changes to provide this. If you're looking for schematics of the building,
I don't think it's, not at this time.
That's the next step.
Just basically a layout like that would probably be the best thing, and then something for Stevens Field as well.
Well, didn't the committee generate some drawings? I mean, do we need to go out?
This is the
That's
latest.
it? Okay.
And there's been changes to it, so
The committee didn't have any money once Art was basically dismissed and we moved off the high. There were no more dollars available,
Okay.
and so no drawings were done. That is the number 2 recommendation, is to create a design with elevation drawings. And the one thing I would say is, I think, so there's 3 options on the cost and 3 options on the site. And I think if we refer to them as the site, which is the idea of the church property and building the new town hall there, versus Stevens Field, versus
Yes.
the physical redoing what we have there, being the site, and the other being the cost models, which were high, medium, low. So basically, the recommendation was the site of the current town hall with expansion into church property. The cost was the medium plan. And
Yes.
if we can continue, because that'll be consistent with whatever they read on the website. So, just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
So if we can start putting some words in that try to express what the board is thinking, and of course, I guess at this time we could put the facilities report in, right? I think as much information to the public as possible, we should put in there with the explanation before you get bombarded with all kind of questions that you can't answer.
do we want to engage Art's firm to make the changes on this?
Yes, if there's money
If
available.
he's amenable, I don't think he'd say no, but,
Did you ever do work for Stevensville?
yep, but
Will
that's still,
someone be able to tell them what changes to make?
yeah, either, I don't want to volunteer Deb, she can volunteer herself.
Would you like to volunteer?
I'd be happy to. Do we,
I don't know if I have it, I don't have that.
is it a wise choice to go back with Art's firm, though? That's really what I'm wondering. Don't forget, he's got the 6.5 $4 million plan that he proposed, and we backed off. He was not involved whatsoever in the medium plan
And you're
or the
afraid
low plan. I'm sorry, he did do the low plan. He was not involved with the medium plan.
You're afraid to hurt his feelings?
Not at all.
Either am I.
But I'm just not certain that that's the, you know, I mean, I'm just questioning it.
Yes, I understand.
Well, if you engage somebody else, they're gonna start from square one, it's gonna cost you more money. I think if you go to Art and say, we want this building to be 4750 in that particular location, we need the addition to the library to total 6,000,
Whatever, yeah.
and this needs to be moved closer together. He's already got this on his computer already, so the people can just move those things around, so.
You have a comment, please.
Yeah, I would advise going back to Art at this time. I feel as though it's probably not a good idea. I would think that to sell the idea, you don't need, you know, something modeled out, but I would go to a sketch art. You basically know what's going to happen with the town hall on the church property, the town hall over here with some parking, the library with an addition, spiffed up town hall, and possibly the historical museum in the front, or, you know, some combination. I think you don't need an architect and an engineering rendering. I think you could have it be a little more artistic, you know, with showing some
You
people
have
sitting
somebody
having.
who's a little bit autistic.
I would have somebody I could ask, but I wouldn't, you know, with your permission. But I mean, who could do? We had somebody do a really nice drawing of the library that we gave to Lisa Warren. You know, I mean, you could take photographs of the buildings and do it, and it would be a rendering that would have trees, that would have, you know, somebody in a colonial costume outside the historic museum ringing a bell.
You'll be there for posterity.
You know, cars parked, you know, possibly somebody reading under a tree. I mean, just somebody coming in and out of town hall. I mean, it doesn't have to be, we're not engaging an architect. And I think if you went to Art, I think you'd be sending the wrong message.
Here's the problem that I see with that. You're talking about two different things. Those are site plans, which I still think you need.
Mhm.
And what you're talking about is a rendering of an elevation
Of the
of the building.
marketing, which is what's one of the recommendations.
And I don't disagree with that, but the problem is the building hasn't been designed. So how do you hire someone to just do an artistic rendering when we have no idea what the building looks like?
I think my thought on this is to ask Art just to do a cleanup on that. I think that's the first thing. And then we just get basically it's no elevations, it's just a flat plane. Just like looking down from the top of an airplane.
Well, this is also a step thing. Let's ask him to do this and see if he'll do it. As we get through the process, if people are saying, oh, I want an elevation, then we can revisit it, because at this moment,
I don't think we need elevations.
well, sometimes people want to see one of my painting wall, but
At some point, we'll need elevations, and I don't even mean if this gets approved, I think in terms of presenting it to the public,
Yeah.
you're right, they're gonna wanna know, well, what does the building look like?
what am I getting for $3.4 million, Mr. LaCourse? That's what they're going to
That's
say.
exactly right. I
But
understand.
again, you have to know what the building looks like in order to do a rendering of your elevations.
And I think people at this early stage just want to see what does it look like, flat plan, as a site plan without major elevations. Here's Stevens Field, here's this one, and that's the end of it.
And he's left, but when you have the conversation with him, have him take off these two ears. That will make Mr. Stevens extremely happy.
Why, they weren't
Okay.
supposed to be there?
Well,
Plow difficulty.
plow issues.
Plowing issues.
This causes him so much headache because he has to plow around it. If you took those off, he can just plow, and
I
go.
know.
Plus, it makes sense anyways, because doing that, it's gonna take more time.
May I say one more thing?
Please, yes.
The only thing I would caution is that the initial, first impressions, so as we're presenting this to the public, especially if it goes in the e-crier with a picture of some sort, That is all anybody is going to remember. And if it doesn't, to your marketing plan, if it doesn't speak to them, if it's flat, if it's not conceptual, there are going to be opinions formed immediately. And that's why I think, more in lines with what Katrinka's talking about, maybe not quite that artistic, but just something that gives them the vision of what a town center could look like, I think would go a long way towards selling this. Wherever it is, doesn't really matter, just the whole idea of that the town needs to improve, and these are the things that we're thinking about.
The other thing we might consider is in terms of how do we get this word out to people, what the mechanism we're going to use. We've tried mailings before, people throw them in the trash. The thing that seems to work is persons speaking to persons. So I don't know if we have some public forums or if we sit at the transfer station and talk to people if they come in to dump it. I don't know, but we have to find something that works. And I don't think there's going to be one thing. It's going to be a combination of things.
And I agree with you.
So I'm not sure if we hold a public, forum, if you will, and present the medium plan and then solicit questions. And as we go forward, maybe we'll have multiple of those. And as we get more information, we can present more information. But I think we need to come up with whatever our strategy is going to be. We also have to figure out in terms of what our drop dead deadline is. I'm not sure because we have to do sometime in January if we're going to have a bond hearing, if we're going to go funding that way.
That's true.
So we kind of have to back up what we.
Well, that's why it's tricky possibly waiting for the church to make a decision in December, because we need to know what we're doing by December and have already made those presentations to the public.
It all comes down to what their assessor has to say. And if their assessor is going to say the same thing that Mr. Rossi's told us, I think what the board offered them is more than fair. So
Can I just throw an idea out there?
you can
Of
throw it
course.
out.
I can throw it out. It just feels really rushed to try to put forward a $3-point-something million plan. Maybe you put forward the, will you spend X amount of dollars to renovate town hall, or not renovate, fix, whatever words we want to attach to it, and just try to see whether the public is willing to do that. Because based on what everything has been said from all of the facilities committees over the past few years and the public meetings, regardless of what we build or don't build, there seems to be a very strong desire and recognition that the existing town hall needs to have something done to it.
That would definitely cost us more because we'd have to have some interim place to stick everybody that's in there.
Yeah.
So the other thing, I thought this was where you're going, but you didn't go there. The other thought has been, just as we did with this particular building, we have a concept, we know how much it is, about how much it is. Ask for design monies to do plans and drawings, just like we did this building. And go in March and say, or deliberative session, say whatever, because it was a little over $30,000 to do all that stuff with this building. And I know it's going to be more for doing that. So maybe what we asked for is 50, 60, 70, whatever it is, to do the design and give up drawings and a model for these particular changes. See if they go for that. If they go for that, then spend the next year going through that whole process of designing the buildings, speccing them out, everything like that. So when we come next March, or 19, ask for the whole thing. Here's the designs, this is the model, this is what it would do for you, all this stuff. But I thought that's where you're going, but you didn't go
But
there.
no,
so
that's also.
I took you there, so.
It's kind of this, well, it's a similar thing, which is to try to get the 3.8 million, 4 million,
Yep.
there's just no time.
No, and I agree. I just want to keep
Because
something.
we don't even have a building design.
I want to keep it in front of the public as much as I can. Otherwise, we don't talk about it, we don't have things there, it's easily forgotten. But I agree, we need to find out what the public wants. We have to give enough information so we can ask for money to do these things that Scott just talked about. All right, let's put some more thought into it, and we'll continue to discuss it again next time we meet. I want to keep it alive.
The other thing, Mr. Meter from Bedell Construction, he's the one that built our transfer station. He came and gave some of his time in terms of impressions and stuff like that. He is willing, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but he is willing to work with us. So maybe he can help us out in terms of if we go that particular route, in terms of asking for design money. And he said in terms of the numbers that we were showing him from this particular process, he says all those particular projects are doable. He can do them for those particular amounts. So we're not off. I think we're very conservative. So it probably cost a little bit less, but he says those numbers are totally doable. The only one he had reservations about is the town hall. It's an old building. Once you get in there, you don't know what you're going to find.
You might find more than what
But
you
he
need.
thought in terms of the money that we allocated for that should be enough.
We keep talking about town hall, what about the costs for the hobo shed? What about the costs for the museum? What about the costs for the annex? You know, we gotta keep that in front of us too.
That's
We're
it.
not just talking about town hall.
But those are, that's the one that he had reservations about in terms of, because it's an old building. In terms of those other ones, yeah, the money for those particular things are in there already. I think the one for the hobo shed, I think is way more money than we actually need.
And is there a plan for the library?
I can't do it.
Yeah, we've got, which one would you like to see?
I wanna see the one that you'd like to do.
Oh, you saw that, you voted it down a couple of years ago.
That's
No,
the new
seriously,
one.
we have very.
I mean, do you know what you wanna go forward with, really?
Yes, we
Honestly.
do, but we can't.
Hold on, everybody. You don't speak yet, speak. Mark?
I apologize.
It's okay.
Katrinka Palacio was Marlboro Library trustee. We have a very basic schematic drawing, of that addition if the historical building has to move. So that would have to move the annex. Things have to happen for that. And if we enlarge the library and town hall is still there, we don't have the church property, we don't have enough parking, we don't have enough space to do it. I mean, it's a domino effect, which is why in 2009 we decided that for all this to happen, the first domino to fall would be the library, and to get them out of there and then have the rest of the space for the administrative offices. Now it seems it's flipped, get town hall, but you can't, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, it's very hard to split these projects up.
Exactly.
We could.
I agree.
There are things that we're probably going to have to do to the library. If we have to go another year, we need to probably shore up the old schoolhouse, with some of the money. I mean, that would have to happen in any case. That's not dependent on extra space or building an addition. That would be part of the total cost, and Ruth seems to think that we really kind of need to do that. We can't support stacks.
Well, I understand, the town hall's the same way. The town hall has to be done regardless of what
Yeah.
kind of decision we're making.
So we could, that's something that we could do while you all were sitting around making up your minds. We could go ahead and do that. And
Well, I think the
help
people,
building, but-
when we start going to the people with these things, they're gonna ask, well, what about the library? I mean, that's been an issue. for-
Well, I would
for
hope
quite
that when
some
you go
time,
before the
you
people,
because
you're
they're
gonna
wanna
present
know what the total plan
the-
is.
all the buildings.
You're going to present the whole plan and
The
the
way-
implementation plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just had a committee that worked really hard for the past year, to do that, and I think the plan is in place. I don't think, we didn't have, we went for the bond, we had a nice sketch of what we wanted for the library. It wasn't architectural drawings. I don't think, we know what buildings look like. The museum is going to look like the museum. The hobo shed, maybe a neatened version of the hobo shed. Town hall, maybe you'd get rid of the little porch, maybe you get rid of the dormer. These are things we can show. We know the library, the facade will stay the same. you can have a nice wing coming out with some windows. It doesn't have to be exactly, it's a suggestion. The town hall, you know, Randy had done this, you could probably come up already an acceptable version of what the town hall could look like. And then, because the bond is gonna help, you know, architect drawings are gonna come out of that money. So,
Okay.
what are you waiting for?
I think you answered it.
I'm grinning because, you know, I agree with what you said. I mean, I agree with what you say, but we, you know, we just keep focusing on town hall, and we have a lot more beyond town hall that we have to address relative to cost, relative to what people are expecting to see. And I think you have all the information, don't get me wrong, but we just keep talking about town hall.
Well, I'm happy to talk about the library, you know, until the cows come home.
You opened up Pandora's box.
But, I mean, I think, you know, the committee was talking about, I mean, town halls has gotten perhaps a little bit more attention because it would go first and some, you know, I mean, that's why I say, you know, our hands are tied at the library right now. We can't,
You can't expand, you can't
We
do
can't
it.
expand.
No, I agree. So it is a checklist from one at phase
You know,
one, phase
something's
two,
gotta
phase
go-
three, phase four.
you know, and it doesn't really have to be faces. I think if you went for, you know, while the town hall's being built, you move the historic, you do some things so that, you know, they can happen at the same time.
Well, you have to have the town hall first to get the people out of the town hall, the current town hall.
Right.
So you can't really be doing anything to the town hall with those people in there, so
Right.
it is a domino.
But you could move the, you know, once the once the new town hall is built, then the annex can
Yes.
go.
Once
You could
the new-
move the museum, then we could start,
Yes.
you know. Meanwhile, knowing that that was gonna happen, we would get architect drawings,
Mhm.
you know.
I think we're all saying the same thing.
And the
I
big
know, but
thing,
you guys are talking about another year.
well, that's something that's an option too, if we think we're too tight with it. The other thing is there's the septic system and the well and stuff. That's going to be common for all those particular things. So that's going to be,
A large system.
has to be in there someplace too in terms of, that's to be in place before they move into the new building. So, and that's going to disrupt out where the historical society is there, so.
Just to remind the board, one reason why it might seem as if there is a town hall-centric discussion happening is that a number of months ago, the board actually voted to make town hall a priority.
The first priority.
Yep.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we were simply acting on what you had
Certainly,
already
absolutely.
decided to do.
Okay, we ready to move on? All right, let's go ahead.
So
If you decide.
So-
Shanda has her walking orders to engage Art and find out how much that cost is going to be and get back to us. I'm just thinking about, are we all clear in terms of next steps?
Not
So-
either Ms. Shanda can do that, or I can do that.
I'd be happy to do it.
Okay.
Should we do an RFP?
I think if you just contact him and tell him what you want and have him give us a price for that. I think he's gonna say it's gonna take us X hours and this is how much we charge per hour. But see what he
Board
says.
fine with that, with no RFP?
Julie?
It's not gonna be
Yeah,
that
that's
much money.
He already did most of it.
Without an RFP?
Well,
So we can
we
continue
did do an
forward?
RFP, but we're not gonna argue about that now.
We're talking about two different things.
Okay,
Okay.
what's your comment? I'm sorry.
I think you're talking about two different things.
If you're gonna
Scott?
speak up here. I'm terrible. I'm terrible.
John Tappan, Stepping Stone Road. This has been a most depressing deja vu 69 times over. This conversation has gone on every meeting. But my comment right now was, Scott was asking about just a plan view, just the boxes on the ground,
Site plan.
and that's it.
Correct.
And you're asking for an RFP for that? It really sounded like you were talking about two different things, because earlier discussion was about need for elevation drawings, schematics, artist concept, etc. That you might need an RFP for,
That's not what we're asking for today.
but
I suspect we're talking, I think it's $115 an hour for his thing, and it'll probably take him like 5, 6, 7 hours at the most.
Yep.
So we're talking like $800-900 at the max. I'm not sure, he's gonna tell us how much it is.
2 hours.
Yeah, well, I think it's gonna be
5
short
hours from
too,
ground zero.
but I don't know. But we'll find out how much it is real soon.
Sir?
We were on the same page.
Paul Gzowski, 46 Lamprey Lane. To clarify, I mentioned when you were talking about Mr. Bedell and bringing him on board to generate whatever he's going to generate, which would be somewhere down the road, I mentioned to Deborah that there might be an RFP process at that level. And I think, you know, and just a word of caution, when you bring somebody in intimately like that to do work, others are entitled to do that same work. So there was a misunderstanding when I communicated that to her. I think Scott is on track. I think Julie's on track. There isn't a whole lot of time to generate the whole ball of wax, but there is enough time to basically put something together to go to the next level and help the town make a decision. And then if that money gets approved, then you generate RFPs and the like. Thank you.
And just to clarify for Paul, Mr. Bedell would help us at no cost. So basically, if we create a group, he would be there to say, okay, yeah, that's construction feasible. So basically a consultant, but also then you get into, if he's going to do that, then we'd ask him not to bid on the particular project.
Well, that's, okay.
So,
Well, yeah.
so
Some might see that as murky.
All right, I think we've done that. Thank you for all your conversation at this time. I'd like to go down to the next item, 6, Julie Governor, Town Administrator.
You may recall a number of meetings ago, we discussed a draft merit policy.
Yes.
And at that time, the board was wanting me to touch base with the police and fire departments to try to bring all of it into one. They want to keep those same forms, but agreed to follow the generic language of the policy and just, and especially the dates. Because what we're trying to do now is tie performance evaluation in with the budget process so that everything kind of flows naturally and flows the way it's supposed to. So at this time, I'm just asking, or just letting you know that that's finalized and we'll move forward from there.
So do you have a final?
I did, I can't see it in front of me here. I thought it was in the agenda packet.
There was stuff in the
It was,
agenda
there
package.
was, it's just not here. I don't know.
So this is something that, let me clarify, that all the department heads agreed to?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We took care of that a long time ago. This was just me circling back, putting it together with the police and the fire performance evaluation forms.
So in the end, the board will have, the board of selectmen will have something that's a finalized version, is what you're saying?
Well, that was what was in the agenda packet that you got on Friday.
Which is,
Yes, all of that.
okay.
Yep.
I had some questions.
Please.
On, I don't know which page, I think it's the first page, chapter 10, says, any suggested pay increases may be included in the following year's fiscal year proposed budget. What is that?
Well, thank you. What it's suggesting, what it's saying is that performance evaluations would be done by, say, September 30th. This point. And now is when everybody's putting their budgets together. So that as we move through the budget process, the departments have already done performance evaluations. If they're recommending any increases for any of their employees, that happens with the budget process. Because that's not how we used to do it. They used to be done, I don't even know, December, April, depends on the department.
So we won't be able to spend that money until July of the next year. So the people who have been evaluated in, let's say it's this year, they have to wait until July. That's not what we're doing now, and I wouldn't want them to have to wait that long to get whatever increases. Because this turns it around the other way, which gets to the other questions I had, because some of them says if you score this particular thing, your merit increase is 0%, 2%, 2%. we've never done it that way. And what if the budget doesn't pass in terms of those particular numbers?
Well-
We can't give them, I guess I'm confused.
That already went to the board, actually, that was months ago. But if the board wants to do something different now,
I don't see how you could do that, because you're proposing these particular increases. What if your salary pool is only 2%? And somebody scores really high and they get,
well, no, let's suppose collectively you end up with $50,000 worth of merit increases because that's the way the performance, you're gonna know that in September,
Mhm.
so you're gonna roll that into your next budget.
which comes back to my first point, then you have to wait another 9 months before you can actually give it to them. I don't like that.
Okay?
I would rather allocate an amount of money and then appropriate out it, or give it out as we see fit, like we do now. I don't want to have them sit there and wait for a year to get an increase based on
Well,
last year's evaluation.
yeah, well, again, putting the dates in was just an effort to try to not have it happen as we've been doing, where then it's retroactive and it creates issues
Well,
in terms of calculating it.
this
in
time we didn't do it
payroll.
retroactive, so
Right.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that again, are we?
it was done for July 1st, and then so when she put it in, so
Well,
I guess I'm a little bit confused,
okay.
and or I don't like how the process is.
Okay,
So-
I'm just saying, this came before the board months ago. That's fine, we can change it.
Well, I don't remember seeing this thing about, it's in C4, C-4, in the compensation calculations.
Yeah,
I don't remember seeing that.
okay.
So if it was there, I didn't see it. So I'm not comfortable with that.
I understand. I agree.
So we don't have a merit policy.
We have a merit policy.
Well, having a merit policy along with performance evaluations means that your merit increase is based on your evaluation, which is what this is. If you want to do it differently, then we can, I guess, talk about how to do it differently. If you want to,
I'm confused.
Now, we're all getting confused.
I'm confused.
A merit is always should be based on your performance
Well-
evaluations. If it's not,
This is not a step raise system.
correct. Step is, you don't even have an evaluation, it's you
Just-
lived another year and
You
you
get a step
got a step
raise.
increase.
We don't want to do
That's
that.
not what this is.
So I'm confused about if you score in these particular ranges, your merit increase, that gives the perception that if you're an outstanding employee, you're going to get a 4% increase.
Again, if the board now doesn't want to do that, then we won't do that.
Because I can't commit to, one, that will pass. So I'm telling, oh, you score really high, you're going to get 4%. Well, it doesn't pass and we don't have money for it. What do you tell the employee? That gives a false assumption that you can, because our employees score very high because they're very good employees. So everybody's going to score in the 40-ish, in using this, the 40s. So those are 3.5 to 4%. So everybody's going to get, that's going to cost lots of money. So
change the range.
I'm comfortable with the way that we do it now. We allocate a certain amount, and then we get out certain amounts for increases based on meritorious performance. And then we get some across the board.
Well, the ones across the board are usually,
It's
colas and things.
Yeah.
But meritorious activity should be truly meritorious. Just because you do your job well doesn't mean you're meritorious.
Well, maybe we need to review this a little bit closer, because this isn't in place at the moment.
Nope.
You don't agree?
This is
No, this is proposed.
So let
All right,
us.
let's take a crack at it again. You're still on board.
In fiscal 17, we had placed costs relative to the health insurance and other related personnel costs in the library budget, but then, because after that, we discovered that it was because of issues unique to Tyler and the way that it allocates costs. We weren't really able to charge those costs back to the library. So if you were to look at the fiscal 17 budget to actual, you would see that the library did not spend a huge chunk of money, and there might have been some areas in the personnel budget that slightly overspent. It's because that money really should have gotten, the money that was allocated to the library really should have gotten moved to the personnel budget.
Yes.
Because we're at the end of the year and personnel budget ended up overall not going over budget, we don't, unless the board wants to, really have to physically actually transfer the money. But my recommendation, and I did talk to the library director about this for the upcoming budget year, is that perhaps we want to show those costs in the library budget and include it in the quarterly payment. Because I don't know how else we're gonna budget for it in the library and then actually make the costs come out of the library, if that makes any sense. We don't have to decide right now, we can think about it for the budget process, but.
So how would you do that? So you would charge the expenses to them, but you give them more money in their quarterly payment?
Well, that probably would have to be the end result of it. Yes, that the library budget would be increased
Mhm.
by the cost of the personnel costs.
As long as it shows how much it costs to run the library,
Right.
because those are expensive costs,
Mhm.
and they need to be reflected in there. So,
Yeah, the whole idea is to look at each department to make sure everything's contained in it, so we know what the relative cost is.
Mhm.
So
I'm just
I think you're in the right path.
throwing it out there.
Yeah.
This kind of actually relates to the facilities committee discussion. The New Hampshire Governor's Commission on Disability, I believe, has someone that will come out and do an assessment, just trying to determine whether the board wants me to contact those individuals and try to get them to come out and actually tell us what we do and do not need to do for the buildings.
I think that would be a valuable piece of information
Okay.
in terms of, as far as I know, they do it for free, right?
That's my understanding.
And hopefully they will give us some kind of assessment in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what's out of compliance and what's in compliance.
And give us some information relative to how we have to comply. Because a lot of this is really, I mean, we've talked about it, but the fact is, when you go into the rules and regulations, if you would, about the ADA, there is a lot of alternatives on what you can do to comply with the ADA. As long as you provide the service. It doesn't necessarily mean that if they can't get into a certain area that you're not ADA compliant, if you are willing to come out of that area and provide the services to them in an area where they can get into. So there's a lot of information out there and alternatives about how to comply with the ADA, and we need to look hard at that before we go spending thousands of dollars to do major modifications to the building.
Because I assume her office would be one of the ones that would administer, your non-compliance. So they're the ones who are going to be coming to say, somebody's complained your building is not in compliance.
Probably, I don't even know, it might also involve, if someone makes a complaint, it might also go to the Attorney General's office. Yeah.
Because it's a federal violation, it's not a state violation. So,
Mm.
but I don't know what office, it's the Governor's Commission, so.
Well, it's a free service, it'll help us move the direction we need to go, and it's going to be done.
I will get hold of them.
What else?
No, that's it.
Number 7, I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's just needs your signature. These just need your signature too. That's all there's in jail.
I forgot to bring me your drone certification then.
Oh.
My kitchen table. I'm sending you back to school.
Huh?
I'm sending you back to school.
Can I just sign this thing? Yep.
It's very similar, similar but different.
What else do you have?
That's it for signatures.
Minutes? Move to accept the public minutes, August 28, 2017.
Second,
Any discussion, changes?
there was a change requested for the last page. Can I read it?
Sure, yeah, I highlighted, I gave the page, the last page right there, is the highlighted changes that I made, and then the clean page is what you should sign. Everyone can read it.
Okay. I was artificially promoted.
Really?
Yes, I was.
Well, you actually didn't say it.
Oh, good. So that makes sense. That makes sense. So you put words in my mouth.
Well, you get away with it, but pretty good.
Well, I caught her, so you can watch it next time.
What were you saying with that specialty pen, I see?
Hey.
Yeah, I tell you. Move to accept the manifest number 5 of week's payroll ending September 10, 2017.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I move to enter into a non-public session, New Hampshire RSA 91-A:311A personnel. Mr. Buckley?
Do you want a second first?
Yes, please.
Second?
Mr. Buckley?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Post, yes. Motion carries, thank you. No minutes to be sealed. Okay, item number 11? Nope, don't need that. Item 12, miscellaneous unfinished business.
Feedback from the department heads about training on Saturdays?
I would say it's safe to say that the department heads were not enthusiastic about coming in on the weekend to have training.
Do we want to engage this other person that she recommended, or how do you want to proceed with that?
No, I think we should move ahead with training, so I guess we're going to have to engage the other person.
Okay, I have her contact stuff, so I'll contact her, and I think, what was the topic? I don't remember what the topic was.
I don't remember that.
Well, I'll find out, because I have it in an email, and I'll find out from her how much it is and when she can do it, and maybe I can send it to the town administrator, she can distribute it to you too, and we can
Absolutely.
talk about it at the next meeting.
That sounds like a plan.
We'll do.
Anything else? Mr. Brown?
No?
Town administrator?
No.
That's it, move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.